cost-effective way. So this can't be that hard, can it? Well, it would be if we didn't start from here. The fact is that all of the IT infrastructure that you've bought in one form or another has been bought by a project. And the danger is that when we talk about regeneration, that's exactly what we will do. We'll have a project for this piece and that piece and the other, and we'll keep on buying bits of IT as a consequence of something else. The reality of this is that you generate lots and lots of different silos, lots and lots of different elements. But to get to that collaborative environment, which you can communicate and you can genuinely add value to the information that's in there, you have to be able to integrate this stuff. Now, I put a different picture up. This is actually spaghetti and meatballs, even though maybe it doesn't quite come out that way. And if you think of the meatballs as being these applications, and you think of the spaghetti being all of the connections between all these different applications, what this picture tells you is that it's just hugely complicated. And every time something gets added, you have to integrate it, it gets even more complicated. Now, I'm not going to criticize this situation because this is just the reality. This is just what happens when you buy by project. When you have a plan, which is a project-based plan. By the way, most people have a project-based plan because it's very easy to budget and it's very easy to determine success. The problem is spaghetti and meatballs. This is why, by the way, you will see some of the very large projects around the world, often in government environments, but not only in government environments, which suddenly slip by a year or 2 years or 3 years. Because the level of complexity has gone up when they've tried to unravel the spaghetti. Now, my argument is, you've got to change your food from spaghetti and meatballs to lasagna. Very straightforward. The nature of lasagna is it's in layers. It's in layers of pasta and cheese sauce and meat paste or whatever, but it's in layers. It's organised in a different way. Let me put it a different way. These are just layers of technology. This is hardware, this is operating systems, this is databases, this is application grids, these are final applications. You don't need to worry about what they are. The fact is that they're all in layers. They're in layers so that you can integrate the environment. If you plan in this environment, you can manage it in a single environment. Because buying bits of technology, going and buying a piece of technology here and there, which is effectively what you do when you buy by project, looks cheap and ends up being massively expensive and usually is the thing that overruns. If you buy in layers, it allows you to put the things on top which you need when you need them. The applications. All this stuff, by the way, is stuff which I hope people in the creative side never see. The only thing I would want the creatives to see is the stuff at the top. This stuff should be simple enough that the users never see it. Not true today. Which brings me on to the subject which some people have heard about, the computing cloud. It's sort of interesting, lots and lots of people are talking about the computing cloud as being fairly close to solving world hunger. The reality is that the cloud is something which is easy to talk about. What I find when I talk is that very few people understand what the cloud is. It is interesting though, it's obviously got somebody, if The Economist and Business Week are talking about the cloud, there's clearly something going on. And I think it's sort of interesting, if you take this is the Gartner hype cycle. And these are a variety of technologies which you don't need to worry about. But cloud computing is at the peak of hype at the moment. Now you'll see this is the peak of inflated expectations, which is up here, where everybody thinks it will solve world hunger, closely followed by the trough of disillusionment, through to the slope of enlightenment and the plateau of productivity. In technology, we use this curve quite a lot. And it's quite interesting to know where you are at any time. And of course, this is what happens, right? New technologies come up, People go, this will solve all my problems up here. Strangely enough, it doesn't, and then everybody goes, oh, what's the new one coming down? By which time a whole stack of cash has been spent. Actually, I would argue, and I'd argue very strongly, that cloud computing, particularly when you're in a regenerative environment, is not actually about it being at the top here. Because the fact of the matter is that the componentry that actually makes up cloud computing is all here. Which is sort of interesting. Because it's the terminology which is actually at the height. It's not necessarily the actual day-to-day stuff. And actually all that this is it's making order. This is another way of talking about my spaghetti and meatballs, and this is another way of talking about lasagna. It's just pools of computing infrastructure which allows people to understand how their data is stored, how they get at it, and what the applications do in this layered approach. And what cloud does is it brings order to the chaos. It forces people from spaghetti and meatballs to lasagna. You cannot deliver a spaghetti and meatballs cloud. It is impossible. And if we think about the cloud, and when we think about how do we regenerate and how do we actually push information out, you can do it lots of different ways. So you can have like the Amazon cloud, which some of you will have heard of, in fact some of you may well have used, is that you just have infrastructure, compute infrastructure, you use the infrastructure, do what you like on it, which is fine. The big stuff is called platform as a service, which is where you provide that layered, that lasagna approach. And I would argue is where you should be planning when you're doing regeneration, because the thing about platform as a service is that it's like a private environment. It's an environment that works inside the boundaries that you give it, which might be an organisation, could be a company, could be the BBC, could be a city, could be whatever. But it's a like-minded environment. Or you could buy software as a service, so you don't buy anything, you just buy the service, which of course is very desirable for some environments. And the best way of thinking about it is what's provided by the cloud provider versus what's provided by the cloud customer. But these are things where naturally people don't think about them until a bit later down the cycle. And my encouragement is you've got to think about these things up front. And actually, why do I think private clouds are really important is because they actually give you the things you need when you're going through change processes. When you're going through change processes, you need fast provisioning. You need high utilization to be able to drive things. You need the thing to be up and running, and you need efficiency. But you do need it private because it does give you the security of all that data, all that intellectual property that is yours. And you need to be able to manage your cost structures. And at the moment, that is the most advantageous place to play. So if I go back to what we've said before about the layers, that is why we think the layers make sense. Because this is just a cloud infrastructure. This is just an infrastructure which we happen to provide the bits of, and the reason that it goes red at the bottom is because we bought a company called Sun. But the reality is that it is about providing all of these bits, all of these layers, not individual bits, which allows you to have that infrastructure. Now, when we look at all the stacks, we think this is the new world of IT. Why would our customers, why would they have to work out how to engineer things to work together? Why would they have to test and certify them together and so on? Why would they do that? Historically, people have done that because you had no choice. I would argue that the concentration of people, when they're doing things like we're talking about at this event, is that they should be concentrating on the things that they do best. Whether it be designing buildings, or whether it be determining what the right thing to do for the local council is, or whether it's the right environment for creative people, or whatever it might be. What they should not be spending their time thinking about is how do I integrate my IT? It should be the responsibility of the vendors